This is Suresh. I want to talk about a few things that relate to my understanding of migrations, more particularly when it comes to entrepreneurs, the scope of it. And let's have a thorough discussion with regards to what is it that Gear offers now. This is a challenge now with the advent of artificial intelligence and with the fact that today the humankind is likely to see a revolutionary change in the coming decade or more, whereby the dependence on each other is likely to get drastically reduced because we are likely to be more and more dependent on the robots in every walk of life. Anything and everything that can be automated is likely to be automated. So it means what to the whole world, and how and in what manner is it going to change the way we live in this world? To be very honest, I see a lot of challenges, and the biggest challenge is likely to be to see that the humankind can stay relevant. And with the AI, I also see that a lot of things that we perceive today to be occupations, to be very beneficial engagements, professions, and vocations are not likely to stay the same because a lot of things could be done much more easily. The only thing that distinguishes humans from any other living organism in the world is the fact that humans can reason out. So there is rationality, there is reasoning, which distinguishes us from any other animal. Let's also say that we as humans don't stand any advantage when it comes to whether it's ability to see, whether it's ability to smell, its ability to run, or any other physical attributes. A whole lot of animals would stand much more superior to us. It's just one thing that made us different, and that was our ability to reason, to logic, to rationally think, to analyze. That is what made us different. And this quality of humans is taken away, if I may say, or rather, if I may say, is manifested in a much more multifarious and a much more dynamic and in a huge manner, much more qualitatively and quantitatively enhanced by the use of artificial intelligence. Now that is what seems to be making a lot of humans become redundant in terms of their ability to contribute to the society at large. So a lot of vocations, a lot of professions would cease to be as they are today. And in this background, whether humankind would depend on each other, would become less and less dependent on each other, so the overall development, would that really cease to occur in those countries, especially those populations wherein it hasn't really impacted the living as much as it may have developed or impacted in developed nations? It's yet to be seen. But one thing is for sure, with the automation, a lot of abilities of humans now can be taken away by artificial intelligence, by robots, and it's very likely that more and more people are likely to be, taking a stand that if they could suffice and work without the dependence on other humans, it is all the more good. And the countries which have more resources, they would have people specializing in artificial intelligence. They'll adopt the technology much more quicker, and they're very likely to also ensure that the robots are able to take care of such needs of them, which otherwise were as of now being met by people who could do skilled or semi-skilled work for them, and for which they required people to come over from other nations because of the cost arbitrage or because of the better living or better livelihood which they used to get in the developed nations. So let's assume that if in the healthcare sector, the artificial intelligence and the robots are able to take care of a lot of operations, healthcare treatments, so it's very likely that the dependence on people coming over from developing nations to these developed nations would be drastically reduced. Similarly, food processing, production, manufacturing, education, law, and a whole lot of other things, which is where there were a whole lot of humans getting employed, who were getting migrated from developing nations. They are going to become meaningless and redundant over a period. Now, this could actually lead to a situation wherein Now the developed nations may not require people to come, and there is likely to be a huge base of population which would remain untouched by the advantages of technology like AI, machine learning, as well as IT. But before even they could be touched by the technology and be able to take advantage of it, they would cease to have any relevance. So their not being able to take advantage is one scenario, but their not being able to equip themselves or learn those skills is a bigger danger. So where do we go from here now? I think the situation that is likely to be more and more precarious for the people to kind of meet, or for the people to be able to do something about in the coming years, would be that the developing nations which have scores of population either below the poverty line or not being able to really learn skills which could give them global edge over others or reflect their global relevance, they would suddenly become not only irrelevant, would suddenly become the liability. And all that they would offer is a head count, maybe the votes, and which would make many developing nations which are democratic be more inclined to not adopt the technology under the fear of unemployment and people losing their jobs. So, having said so, countries which are South Asian countries like India, Pakistan, then countries like Indonesia, and many other countries which are democratic nations, they are very likely to be taking policies to appease the population, and they would try to give security to the population by mere engagements for livelihood, which itself would not have longevity. So now, even if I give short-term engagement or employment so that people stay employed and they don't feel dejected, I don't think that's likely to really give a long-term solution to the changing times. So adoption of technology by doing things, learning new skills is the answer. And it's also very important that people can learn new skills. The countries really don't focus on myopic and short-term gains in terms of letting the people remain unemployed, unskilled for the sake of certain petty political benefits. They must prepare themselves for a bigger game. They must change themselves and prioritize learning of skills and ensuring that the human resource becomes a global asset. So the changing times are ensuring that humans would have to really circumvent, grow beyond their local politics, handicaps and limitations, and try to excel being assets in the global economy or global workplace. And the engagements have to be such wherein either you use technology to your advantage and adopt that technology before others do it, and use it in a manner that it reflects a lot of relevance and brings in innovations before others do, and your smarter use of technology gives you an advantage to be able to work with the technology and stay relevant and provide solutions which are beyond the limitations of humans. That is one solution. And the second solution could be whereby your learning of skills, and more particularly your creativity in and around it, ensures that you are always ahead of technology. And that would be only possible when you not only understand the technology in terms of where exactly this technology is likely to fail you, but also to understand that where exactly the technology is not likely to impact the engagement, the outcomes and deliverables which only humans can provide. So, situation is precarious, very challenging. The world is very likely to get much more divided now, according to me, with people not just thinking about the resources and staying divided on the basis of the GDP, per capita income, and law and order, better lifestyles, but more particularly in a manner that technology would now divide the world. And when the technology would divide, technology is blind. Technology is not going to divide people on the basis of North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, or any other country. The technology is going to divide the world in a manner wherein people who can embrace the technology, use it to their advantage, or ensure themselves to remain immune to the advent of technology and the usage of technology by others would succeed much more than such people who are going to stay vulnerable with the advent of technology. So, in this background, there is also a very important aspect that how would the countries behave. I think the countries with better resources would always stand to have advantage that they can now limit the human resource influx to limit the same only in favor of such people who are skilled, who are technically very sound, and don't open their borders for such people who will be migrating only for certain smaller skills. But that's not an advantage. That's no more something which stands as a priority for the developed nations. So developed nations would want that their country has only such people who give them an advantage in terms of the technology, and so that they are always ahead of others in terms of advancement. And this would eventually lead to lesser migration or more barriers to migration in favor of only such people whom they want and who could fit into a new world order which is described by better technology and the use of it. And the ones who don't relate to the technology, do not stand to be assets in the changing world order, they stand to not have global presence, and they are likely to be getting more and more dependent on social framework or the social securities which could be provided in these nations. So countries which are technically sound, with technically sound people, they would always be in a position to call shots, ensure that they could limit the number of influx of people. And such countries which have huge population of unskilled human resource like India and many sub-Saharan countries in South Asia, they would be put to a huge disadvantage which can't even be comprehended, because the political framework of these countries would continue to exploit the poor people under the guise of social security, which is very short-lived and most importantly not sustainable. So people who are skilled, they would venture out. They would not want to stick around with their countries only for the intent that their returns, their growth would be always subjected to the larger number of dependent population which is unskilled. So they would see their growth getting plateaued. They would want to really venture out and get globalized. And the population which is dependent, which is unskilled and technically deprived, they would stay back in their countries and would only enable the politicians to take undue advantage of their outnumbering the skilled human resource in that country in terms of their ability to continue to elect political parties who would have myopic approach, a short-term vision for growth of their individual companies instead of the national community, the country as such. So this is where we stand today. So I would say that in this scenario, it's very important that the countries are able to now prioritize themselves in terms of their positioning on a global platform. I also expect that people would be able to consciously realize that it's not the countries that divide them anymore, it's the technology and the skills that divide them the most, and to at a very right time take advantage of the technical advancement, the know-how, and very importantly, the newer technologies are very much accessible. They're not very costly. Today, the formal education in universities have ceased to have their relevance, because now any person who is coming from any background in any part of the world with a mere access to internet could have access to a lot of things which can enable him or her to learn new skills, to excel in new areas of excellence, and gain their value in the changing world. So that's very much a possibility for the people now, and they don't have to stay stagnant. So that choice of people to use the technology to their advantage, to use social media, access to technology and internet to their advantage is something which is of strong calling. And technology today has, though it divides the people, but very fortunately it is such that it is accessible, and technology is very egalitarian. It has brought everybody on the same level. Like, if I may say so, today, whether it's iPhone, it's technology of Android, it's usage of technology in AI, whether it's the richest man on the earth, Elon Musk, or any young boy of 10, 12, 15 years in any part of the world would have almost equal access to. So, on the one hand, though, the knowledge of technology would be the biggest differentiator, but the access to technology has made almost everybody stay at one position. So it's for them to take a call, how would they take advantage of it. So what are the takeaways from this conversation or this today's podcast is that, first, it's a changing world order and it's very important to stay relevant. Second, in the changing times, we just cannot take things for granted, because the changing world order would ensure that a lot of people would become irrelevant, because their activities, their engagements, their professions, their vocations would be taken over by robots. Third, we again stand to see the world getting more and more divided. Now, the manner of division would be less on countries, but more on technology providers and technology consumers. And furthermore, I also say that the countries who are already developed stand to be biggest beneficiaries of the changing times, because their resources could ensure that there could be more and more number of people whom they could employ who are technically sound, who are technology providers, because they could attract human resource and talent from any part of the world, and they could also limit the number of people migrating to them who are not skilled and not sound with the newer technologies. Now, the precarious situation is more for the countries which are developing, because there is an apprehension that they would stay developing and they would never be able to become developed, because the talented people would move out of those countries, and the people who would stay back would be such people who would, for want of their technical skills, stay as liabilities, which the political framework of these democratic nations would allow them to stay vulnerable for political ends, but in the long run they would lose, because the country would not be able to sustain the populist measures. That is one. And finally, the fact that technology today brings everybody to a same level enables people to consciously make efforts now to learn skills, to embrace the technology, or to get into such professions whereby the technology can't erode their relevance, and they are able to thrive by using the technology or keeping themselves immune from the technical advancement. So I hope this podcast has some relevance, and there could be few things which I may have shared that would resonate with you, with the listener. And I also wish that I'm able to record more with more facts and data and analysis, which could actually enable my listeners and the people whom we want to benefit and we want to stand for, take advantage of it. So thank you for reaching up to this level and having given time to hear the podcast. I wish we stand to benefit with the changing world order, and we make a world which is free from poverty, free from the apprehension and fears of irrelevance, and we could also have a world wherein humans are able to thrive and grow with the best of human qualities getting manifested in every aspect of humanity. Thank you.